5:30. The orders of the day are set in accordance with District Policy PO 2522, objections to adoption or use of instructional, library media center, or reading list materials. By the way, I will be the chair for the moment. One of the orders of business today will be electing officers, at which time I will, in the parlance of pro wrestling, do a hot tag and let the real chair do it. So the first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone please stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I am going to list the committee members. I will probably mangle a few names. I apologize. When I list your name, if I mangle it too badly, please correct me immediately. The first is the District Coordinator of Media, appointed by the Superintendent, Diane Parentella. The second set are parents of students enrolled within the district who were appointed by each school board member. District 1 is Christy Mileto. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Mileto, close enough.
Okay. District 2 is Colleen McCallum. Okay. District 3 is Katie Carr-Max. District 4 is LaDonna Corbin.
Maybe that's her.
Is she attending remotely? Okay. District 5 is Laura Torres. Then we have the administrator appointed by the superintendent, Sarah Van Bremer. Okay. Oh, and I'm sorry, Liz Cannon, instructional staff appointed by the superintendent. Thank you. Thank you for saving me from myself. Okay, so the purpose of the District Objection Committee is to review objections submitted by parents and legal guardians or residents of the county for library and media materials, reading lists, and district-approved instructional materials. Once a parent or legal guardian or resident's initial objection at the school level has been denied, the petitioner's challenge escalates to review by members of the District Objection Committee. Just as an aside, I understand that in the last last committee, there were no books that were reviewed, and this one we expect to have several. So, am I to read? Okay. So, on December 11, 2023, the school board approved revised policy 2522, objections to adoption or use of instructional, library, media center, or reading list materials. The policy outlines roles and responsibilities for this committee, which are as follows. 1, all state-adopted and non-state adopted materials must be evaluated for bias-free content, must adhere to Rule 68-1.094-124 entitled Required Instruction Planning and Reporting, and Rule 68-7.0715 entitled Certification Plans for Instructional Materials and Library Media, and must follow Florida State Statutes Chapters 847 and 1006. The school district shall discontinue any material used in classroom or library made available on electronic devices or provided on a reading list that contains content that is found to be pornographic, prohibited under Florida Statute 847.012, and inappropriate or unsuitable for age and grade level for which materials are used. We are a district committee functioning under the Government in the Sunshine Law under Section 286.011, Florida statutes. Meetings must be noticed and open to the public in accordance with that statute. I will be providing a quick sunshine seminar pursuant to the policy shortly. An audio recording of each meeting will be made available on the school district's publicly accessible website for transparency, along with minutes. Members will be required to complete specified training of Florida statutes, sunshine law requirements, relevant policies, and procedures. We will be conducting those tonight. Committee members will require consultation of a reputable, professionally recognized, or professional who is recognized at reviewing periodicals and school community stakeholders. A school library media specialist, principal, or school district employee holding a valid educational media specialist certificate who has been trained and completed online training program developed by Florida Department of Education, online training program, has the authority to remove instructional materials, media library center or materials, classroom library materials, or materials on a reading list if the materials violate Florida statutes, rules, state academic standards, or district policies. Under Section 1001.215 sub 8 Florida statutes, all removed or discontinued book and materials must be reported to the superintendent or superintendent's designee. The next section says that the school board attorney will conduct sunshine law training at this time. Reading, I would like to introduce our school board attorney, Mr. Sid Ansbacher, to provide that training. Good evening, Mr. Ansbacher, you have the floor. I have the floor. So, ready for the PowerPoints. Okay, as I stated before, sunshine law is subject to Section 286.011 Florida statutes. There are other subsections that apply, but that's going to be our general requirement. There should be, as best I can tell, no available exemptions, so we don't have to go really deep into the weeds. Next slide. So what does the sunshine law require? Meetings of a public board, and it should say commission without an S, be open to the public. Reasonable notice of the meetings are to be given, and minutes of each of the meetings must be taken. Next slide. How broad is the coverage? And this is straight out of the statute. Any board or commission, any agency or authority of any county, municipal corporation, or political subdivision. We are home rule and a political subdivision in the state of Florida. This is a commission that is advisory to the board. The board would be making final agency action, therefore we are subject to the Government in the Sunshine Law. There has been a previous all-staff board that was found by a court not to be subject to sunshine. I would contend because we have members of the public, we are subject to the sunshine law under currently applicable law. Florida's sunshine law is equally applicable to elected and appointed boards and commissions. This one is an appointed board, and as I said, because of the role we play, we would be subject to it. Next slide. Is it subject to the Sunshine Law? It is expressly subject to Florida's Government in the Sunshine Act as an advisory board. As I said before, it is also within the policy 2522 that you all are subject to Government in the Sunshine and training. Next slide. Why? As it says there, the determinative factor is whether this committee has decision-making authority concerning matters that will foreseeably come before the school board. You are making recommendations to the school board, and therefore, as to whether books are going to remain or be returned on, to the shelves or not, it is a statutory duty, and you are therefore subject to the Sunshine Law. You'll note there's a theme here. Every slide almost is going to say, because of this, because of this. There's no question. So I'll quit saying this is why you're under the sunshine, and we'll just get to the meat of each of the next slides. Slide 6, please. And again, even though we are making a recommendatory authority decision, that is absolutely, under a board like this, subject to government in the sunshine. It would be not the case if it were typically just a group of staff, for example, who were making a technical argument to the board, but you are actually reviewing statutes and policies to suggest to the board whether to put books back on the shelf or not. Next slide, please. And again, it is the nature of the act, not the makeup, not the proximity of the act to final decision that determines whether the Sunshine Law applies. Frankly, this is definitely a statute where it was created pursuant to the Florida Constitution, Section 1, or Article 1, Section 24, provides for government in the sunshine and public records. It is a constitutional obligation. Therefore, please understand that we really need to, wherever there's a question, comply with the Sunshine Law. Next slide. What is a meeting? It's not just here. It is where two or more committee members are meeting to discuss any matters that may foreseeably occur before this committee or before the board on a matter that this committee is addressing. So, for example, if two people happen to run into one another at a local school and you are both on this committee, it's great to say hello, it's great to see you. It is absolutely not appropriate to discuss a book that you all may be reviewing at that time. Next slide. What is a meeting? As I said, it's basically, it's face-to-face, it's telephonic, email, text message, social media posts, carrier pigeon, smoke signal. The bottom line is anything where you are communicating is with any member of this board should be considered to be a meeting the second that you would be discussing any topic that is going to come before the board. So please don't. I will tell you that for the school board itself, there are certain ways to notice if two members are going to be meeting on or off campus. I don't anticipate that that would apply here, and frankly, it would just complicate. I would suggest any time that you all meet, particularly because of the concern about ensuring that you avoid a sunshine violation, just limit your discussions about books or anything related to the books in front of you to this room. Next slide. There is, and again, that is a key issue. While a board cannot vote on anything without a quorum present, there need not be a quorum in order for the Sunshine Law to apply. So that applies both here if we lack a quorum, as well as if two of you run into one another in the produce aisle at Publix. Next slide. What about communications between a committee member and a non-committee member? As a general principle, if you are meeting with someone who is not a committee member and they want to discuss with you the topic of the books, that is not subject to government in the sunshine, but it is inappropriate if a non-committee member is deemed to be acting as a conduit. And what the Florida Government in the Sunshine Manual, as drafted by the Attorney General, says is if board member one talks to, say, me as the lawyer for the board, and I carry that message to board member 2, I am acting as a go-between or a liaison. If I am acting as a go-between or a liaison, then that is a violation of the Sunshine Act, and I am as responsible for that as anyone else. So, but as a general principle, it is perfectly appropriate to talk with people who are not members of your committee. Next slide, please. Unilateral communications by committee meeting members. Technically, a committee member can talk unilaterally with one or more committee members as long as it's truly one way, and the committee members are free to listen, not listen. The problem is unilateral communications like these that are conducted by committee members are bad ideas because people feel an urge to respond. And the second that you have a response, the person who responds has created a sunshine violation. So, as a general rule, even though the unilateral communication isn't itself a problem, you are basically laying out a red flag, because if it's a topic, for example, that's, say, a book that is currently before this board, that response will, the second it comes, creates a sunshine violation. Next slide, please. Again, same thing. I mean, no matter how it's done, whether it's orally, as I said before, passenger pigeon, whatever, it's, you really need to be very careful in trying to avoid initiating those communications. Next slide. What notice requirements must be met? The Sunshine Law says reasonable notice must be provided for all public meetings. What's reasonable? There's not a bright line test. The notice must be sufficient to apprise the general public of matters that may affect rights and afford them an opportunity to attend. Generally, we do, I think, 8-day notices here, but understand for sunshine purposes, pure sunshine, not subject to our policy, 48 hours has been deemed to be appropriate. If there's an emergency hearing, as is noted, it's 24 hours. I don't know that I would bet that I would eat my car if I'm wrong on this, but I don't foresee that it's likely we will have emergency meetings that will be set here. We are asking you all already to do amazing work, to show up and do the serious work of this committee. Next slide, please. What should the notice contain? Time, place, location of the meeting, and that would be down to what the room is, an agenda of the matters to be discussed. Understand that a sunshine agenda is supposed to generally give you, at the bare minimum, general notice of the topics that are going to be considered. It doesn't have to go down to the molecular level, but it's as long as you have the general notice with notice of topics, that is sufficient for sunshine. As you can see, our agendas tend to be more specific than that. It's more consistent with our policies, but that is the bare minimum under 286.011. Next slide. And again, where should meetings be held? Location must be sufficient to allow public access. We're going to meet here. I mean, Kira is saying, nodding yes. Facilities that are too small can result in violations of the Sunshine Law. We've had issues before where you have fire code limitations here and other boards I've worked with. You can have remote attendance, but it starts, beyond the sunshine issue, there's just practical limitation of participation. So to the greatest extent possible, particularly for something that's a policy-related issue of this magnitude, having a room as large as this makes a world of difference. In theory, out-of-town meetings are allowed. When I say out-of-town, I still mean within the district, assuming good reasons exist for doing so and public notice is given. If, for example, there were a reason to meet in Vero or in Sebastian or wherever within the county, you can do it, but as long as public notice is given. But as a general principle, because of the limitations on access that it can occur, all the way from parking to the ability to fit people within the room. It's generally, unless there is a very good reason, the better practice by far to meet where you know you have the facilities and where you have the ability for people to attend. Next slide, please. Okay, voting in public meetings. Secret ballot voting is not allowed. Boards can vote via ballots. Ballots become public records. I'm going to note for purposes of our meeting, especially now that we are definitively under the sunshine, and our first meeting, our first board that attended under the current format apparently did not have any books. It's my understanding that prior votes had been in the sunshine as it is, but I will simply tell you that where the policy is inconsistent and would allow for confidential ballot voting, we are going to comply with the Sunshine Act, and we will not have confidential voting on this. That'll be adjusted in the next iteration of the policy. Abstaining from votes is not allowed absent a clear conflict of interest. Ms. Rosario's in the room, knows Robert's rules very well, and there are provisions for abstaining, but under Florida law, there is both an Attorney General opinion and a case that say that you can only abstain where there is a clear conflict of interest. A clear conflict of interest being defined by statute as the member or a member of the person's family or where the person is employed getting a potential financial benefit out of the vote. I would suggest it's going to be highly unlikely in a book committee that there will be a clear conflict of interest under Florida statute. So I would anticipate if you are in attendance, you will be called upon to vote. Next slide. Penalties for violating the Sunshine Law. Committee member who knowingly violates Sunshine Law commits a second-degree misdemeanor. Civil penalties of up to $500 per violation. So again, it benefits to strictly comply. And next slide. Penalties again, removal from office, injunctive relief, a prevailing party can obtain attorney's fees. You don't want to be violating it. If it turns out that we have an inadvertent violation, we can always ratify under Florida law. That is to say, vote afterwards to confirm a vote that may be the subject of a technical violation. But as a general principle, you really want to get it right the first time. Next slide. Any questions? Board or public? Kira says I did a good job. I'm actually thinking I have just enough of a monotone that I got through it. So the next matter is really the heart of tonight. The Florida Department of Education has prepared a library media training program that is crucial to your understanding of what the DOE's interpretation of the requirements of this committee to be, and we'll now begin.
Welcome to the Library Media and Instructional Materials Training. This training is to assist librarians, media specialists, and other personnel involved with the selection and maintenance of school district library materials. This training also provides assistance to reviewers of instructional materials and was created by Florida stakeholders for Florida school districts. There are 4 main purposes to this training. Part 1 discusses the criteria for the selection of library materials and discusses the requirements of many Florida statutes. Parts 2 and 3 of the training are for library media specialists regarding collection policies and selection and maintenance of library materials and reading lists. And Part 4 of the training is to assist reviewers of instructional materials. We are going to begin with Part 1, Criteria for Selection and Maintenance of Library Materials and Reading Lists. The primary objective of the Library Media Center is to implement, enrich, and support the educational program of the school. The Library Media Center shall provide a wide range of materials on all levels of difficulty, with diversity of appeal and with a representation of different points of view. In 2022, Section 1006.29 was amended by House Bill 1467 to require the Department of Education to develop an online training program for librarians, media specialists, and other personnel involved in the selection and maintenance of library collections and materials on reading lists. This is that online training. Beginning January 1st, 2023, this training must be taken annually by such persons before reviewing and selecting library materials. Library materials and materials on a reading list must meet several statutory requirements. Here and on the next few slides, we'll discuss what Florida statute requires. Materials must be 1. Free of pornography and all materials prohibited under Section 847.012 Florida statute are not permitted in a school library or media center. 2. Materials must be suited to student needs and their ability to comprehend the material presented. And finally, materials must be appropriate for the grade level and age group for which the materials are used and made available. While there is no statutory definition of pornography in the Florida statutes, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines it as the depiction of erotic behavior, as in pictures or writing, intended to cause sexual excitement. Pornographic materials may not be included in a library media center or on a reading list. As stated on the previous slide, materials must be free of pornography and all materials prohibited under Section 847.012 Florida statute are not permitted in a school library or media center. Florida statutes 847.012 states, an adult may not knowingly distribute to a minor on school property any picture or visual representation of a person or a portion of a human body which depicts nudity or sexual conduct, sexual excitement, sexual battery, bestiality, or sadomasochistic abuse, and which is harmful to minors. Any book, pamphlet, magazine, or printed matter that contains explicit and detailed verbal descriptions or narrative accounts of sexual excitement or sexual conduct, and that is harmful to minors. Harmful to minors requires that any description or representation of nudity, sexual conduct, or sexual excitement meet 3 requirements to be found to be harmful to minors. First, the description or representation must predominantly appeal to a prurient, shameful, or morbid interest. Second, the description or representation must be patently offensive to prevailing standards in the adult community with respect to what is suitable for minors. Reference to the adult community as a whole means extremes should not be relied upon. The community will generally mean the school community or district. The third and last requirement is that taken as a whole, the material is without serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for minors. Materials must be analyzed in its entirety to determine whether there is any serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for minors. No library material shall be used, distributed, or made available to students if it contains content that can meet the requirements found in the Harmful to Minors statute. Districts should err on the side of caution with regards to material that is potentially harmful to minors and in violation of Section 847.012 Florida statutes. Florida statute lists the penalty for violating Section 847.012 Florida statute. Any person violating any provision of this section commits a felony of the third degree. To protect media specialists, a book that includes nudity, sexual conduct, or sexual excitement may not meet the tenets of harmful to minors, which are: A, predominantly appeals to a prurient, shameful, or morbid interest. B, is patently offensive to prevailing standards in the adult community as a whole, with respect to what is suitable material or conduct for minors. And C, taken as a whole, is without serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for minors. Please remember that violation of the Harmful to Minors statute is a crime. The second and third criteria, as listed on the slide titled Criteria for Selection of Library Materials, referred to in Section 1006.40, states that materials must be suited to student needs and their ability to comprehend the material. Media specialists should also consider at a minimum the age, maturity level, and grade level of students with access to the material. Media specialists should consider factors such as the degree to which the material will be supplemented or explained by classroom instruction, the educational purpose of the material, with priority given to materials aligned to state standards, as well as the accurate portrayal of the state's broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity without bias or indoctrination. Media specialists should also consider student interest and the needs of their specific school population when choosing materials. Materials that are neither pornographic nor prohibited by Section 847.012 may still be inappropriate for students. Media specialists should always err on the side of caution when selecting materials. It's good practice to assess whether or not you, as the adult making book selection decisions, would be comfortable reading aloud the material in question in a public meeting. If you would not be comfortable reading the material in a public setting, then you should lean towards not making the material available in a school library for children. Some of these requirements will be addressed later in this training. The criteria for selection of library materials, reading list materials, and instructional materials is found in additional statutes. Florida statutes additionally dictate that materials adhere to several requirements listed in Section 1006.34, Parent 2, Parent B. Many of the requirements are the same as in previous slides. This section discusses using the following considerations in the selection of library media materials. 1. The age of students who have access to the material. 2. The educational purpose to be served by the material. 3. The degree to which the material would be supplemented and explained as part of normal classroom instruction. And 4. Consideration of the broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity of students of the state. In addition, please be aware that any material containing pornography or otherwise prohibited by Section 847.012 may not be used or made available within any public school. Additionally, Section 1006.28, Parent 2, Parent D, 2. Requires each district school board to adopt procedures for developing library media collections. The procedures must address the following criteria. A. Book selection must meet the criteria in Section 1006.40, Parent 3, Parent D. B. Consultation of reputable, professionally recognized reviewing periodicals and school community stakeholders. C. Library Media Center collections based on reader interest, support of state standards and curriculum, and the academic needs of students and faculty. D. The regular removal of books based on physical condition, rate of circulation, alignment to state standards, relevancy to curriculum, and out-of-date content. Parental rights are very important in Florida. The Parental Bill of Rights, Section 1014.04, Parent 1, Parent A, Florida statute, states that parents have the right to direct the education and care of his or her minor child. Taking this into consideration, districts must have policies in place to ensure that parents have the opportunity to review library materials, including classroom libraries, and parents must be informed of these district policies. Be aware that each school district is required to provide parents access to any book in a school library if the district receives a written request. As a reminder, a parent may access the department's parental rights page to share concerns. Please share this link with your school community. It is the responsibility of each media specialist to know their district's challenged materials policy. Section 1006.28, Parent 2, Parent A, 2, Florida statute, states that each district school board must adopt a policy regarding an objection by a parent or a resident of the county to the use of a specific material, which clearly describes a process to handle all objections and provides for resolution. We encourage districts to adopt robust policies to carefully consider objections. Districts may wish to consider including specific details about committee responsibilities and meeting timelines. Districts may also consider having an objection process in place prior to the purchase of any new materials. We have now reached part 2 of the training, where we will explore collection development policies. School districts are required by statute, Section 1006.28, Parent 2, Parent D, 2, Florida statute, to adopt procedures for developing library media center collections and post these procedures on school websites. Library collection development can be defined as the ongoing process of systematically building high-quality print and non-print information resources to meet the information needs of a particular district or school. There are 3 main goals in collection development. 1. A good collection development policy provides guidelines for the selection of materials for the library that are balanced. 2. Collection development also provides guidelines for retention, preservation, and archiving of materials. Examples of a balanced collection include fiction, nonfiction, and the inclusion of opposing viewpoints. And 3. Collection development policies describe the ongoing process for removal of inappropriate materials, including the regular removal or discontinuance of books based on criteria provided in Section 1006.28, Parent 2, Parent D, Florida statute. Collection development policies are important as they seek to address the needs of the district, school, and community. Collection development primarily focuses on the acquisition of print, non-print, and other library materials by a trained librarian or school library media specialist for school staff, students, and community stakeholders. Collection development also involves strategies for continuing acquisition, evaluation of new materials, and the existing collection in order to determine how well a particular library serves its users. A thoughtful collection development includes improving the library's materials through the selection of materials and deselection of unwanted information. In statute, section 1006.28, parent 2, parent D, 2. Each district school board is responsible for establishing and maintaining school library media services for all district public schools. The school board must establish policies on selection of books that includes providing training regarding the prohibition against distributing harmful materials to minors, including stakeholder input, including parents, and requires the consultation of reputable, professionally recognized reviewing periodicals. While not required in statute, districts may also consider the consultation of crowdsourced reviews. We will discuss peer reviews and crowdsourced reviews in a later slide. A collection development process contains 5 categories, which are goals, audience, acquisition, maintenance, and preservation. The first category is goals. The goals section should address the mission and vision of the school or district and special program considerations, the current collection analysis, and the responsibilities of the media specialist. The second category is audience. It's important to address the specific population of the school or district by looking at several factors, including the school or district demographics, the school or district community, the needs of the population, and the ways in which transparency is offered to the community regarding the current collection and selection of new materials. The third category is acquisition. Some questions that can be asked pertaining to acquisition are: what is the purchasing budget for the year? Will there be any additional funds from fundraisers? What are the district policies and procedures for selection of materials? Are the curriculum needs of the students and faculty being met? Are readers' interests taken into consideration? Have selections been reviewed by stakeholders? Are professional reviewing journals consulted for new purchases? The fourth category is maintenance. Maintenance considerations include the inventory policies of the district and knowing the procedures for removal of materials. The fifth and final category is preservation. During this step, it is important to consider the long-term development of the collection. District policies on preservation should be followed. Section 1006.28, Parent 2, Parent D, 2D, Florida statute, states that districts must adopt procedures that provide for the regular removal or discontinuance of books based on, at a minimum, physical condition, rate of recent circulation, alignment to state academic standards, and relevancy to curriculum, and out-of-date content. You may wish to use the following questions as guidance for making removal or discontinuance decisions. Is the content outdated? Has the book circulated in the last few years? Are the materials age appropriate for the school community? Does the material include information that is biased, racist, or sexist? Is the book irrelevant to the needs and interests of students and staff? Has a subsequent edition of the book been added? Or is there a better book that should be obtained instead? Are there multiple copies of the book available, and do they circulate? Is it material that is available in an online database? Is the book physically damaged beyond repair or poor quality? District cataloging software may be able to report on collection statistic data that will help media specialists to make decisions based on the age of collection, balance of materials, circulation data, and other important data points. This report, if available, can help with your removal decisions. In order to select materials for a school library or media center, a school district employee must possess certain qualifications. In addition to a professional license, he or she must be certified as an educational media specialist. A person qualifies as a certified educational media specialist in one of two ways. One way is that an individual has an undergraduate or graduate major in library science or educational media, or has a bachelor's degree with at least 30 semester hours in library science or educational media. The second way is that a certified educator adds the educational media specialist certificate to their credential by passing the educational media specialist exam. Section 1006.28, Parent 4, Parent F, Florida statute states, school principals are responsible for overseeing compliance with school district procedures for selecting school library and media center materials at the school to which they are assigned. Elementary classroom libraries are a type of school library. Materials in all school libraries must be selected by a certified media specialist. We will now discuss Part 3 of the training, which is Selection and Maintenance of School Library Materials. Florida Statute 1006.28, Parent 2, Parent D, requires that school districts must adopt procedures to ensure that library and media center collections support academic standards and curriculum, support the academic needs of students and faculty, and are based on the interest of readers. Each of these requirements is important to the creation and maintenance of a school library media center with an environment capable of supporting students in their academic pursuits and creating lifelong readers. When evaluating your collection, you may wish to ask the following questions. Does the collection meet the current and future needs of the school population and align with the curricular and instructional needs? Does the collection align with the mission and vision of the district or school? Has the collection been developed in compliance with Florida statutes, state of board education rules, and school district policies? Planning for the future is a best practice of collection and selection policies. As a media specialist, you should consider a 5-year purchase plan that takes into account planning for future collection needs. When choosing materials for your library media center, choose materials that are age appropriate by taking into consideration the ages, grade levels, levels of maturity, reading levels, and special curricular needs and programs of your school or district. Materials should reflect all levels of abilities, from struggling readers through those that are advanced. Special curricular needs may include materials for English language learners, gifted learners, and schools that may have specialized programs, such as technology magnets and advanced programs. Section 1006.28, Parent 2, Parent D, 2, Florida statute, states that the consultation of reputable, professionally recognized reviewing periodicals and school community stakeholders is required. Consultation with stakeholders and professional periodicals can provide information helpful to ensuring the selection criteria set out in statute, rule, and policy are met. Professional review journals typically include a summary of the plot, an appraisal of literary quality, and a recommended age or grade range. Best practices are to consult multiple professional review journals. While the law requires consultation of peer reviews, districts should consider the consultation of crowdsourced reviews. When selecting new materials for the library media center, the following suggestions may be considered. Make sure your collection meets the curriculum needs of your students and faculty. Survey your stakeholders for suggestions. Make sure your collection has a mix of both fiction and nonfiction. Consider the diversity and age of your collection. Make sure to address the high interest needs of readers. Use reputable book vendors. Look at award and state lists that are appropriate for your school age level. And follow all district protocols for the selection of new books. Annually, beginning after the 2022-2023 school year, Florida Statute 1006.28, Parent 2, Parent E, 3, states that each superintendent must submit to the department a report that identifies each material that the school district received an objection to, and each material that was removed or discontinued as a result of an objection. The department then must publish the list of materials that were removed or discontinued as a result of an objection. Media specialists should check this list as part of their selection procedures. Book selection should take academic standards and the academic needs of students and faculty into consideration. Some ideas for gathering this information include assessing readers' interest through various methods, including surveys, suggestion boxes, and other community stakeholder input. Titles from state standard book lists, such as the ELA BEST sample texts and the Civic Literacy Reading List, should also be considered. Evaluate the school needs to include the school mission or vision, performance or improvement plans, any curriculum needs, or curriculum for specialized programs, and school population needs. Always consider any budgetary restrictions and the age of your population. Stakeholders are an important part of the selection process. Section 1006.28, Parent 2, Parent D of the Florida Statutes requires consultation with school community stakeholders in the purchasing of new library media materials. All stakeholders should be given an opportunity for input. Consultation can provide valuable input to assist the media specialist in making selections that not only comply with Florida statute, rule, and district policies, but to assist with the selection and maintenance of a well-rounded library collection. Be aware that the school board is ultimately responsible for materials maintained in a school library, and the school board must have procedures for the selection of materials, as well as procedures for a parent or county resident to present objections. District policies for the maintenance of library media collections must be followed. Policies should include guidelines for organization. Decide how materials are organized and make sure signage is clear and up to date. Availability. Inventory everything in your collection at regular intervals and delete lost items in your library management system after a certain amount of time. Knowing your cataloging profile, which includes how you classify materials and their corresponding prefixes. It's also helpful if barcoding and labeling is placed in the same location on all books. You should also know how your school submits its MARC records into its library maintenance system. Repairing damaged books is a large part of maintaining a library collection. Lightly damaged books can often be repaired with basic book repair supplies, such as specialized tape and mylar for book jackets. Books with mold or any liquid damage should be removed from the collection. Complete the department's training program for instructional material review. Part 4. Part 4. Instructional Materials Reviewers. This training is also designed to assist reviewers in complying with the criteria for evaluating and recommending instructional materials for adoption, as set forth in Section 1006.31, Parent 2. This training will provide a brief overview of the requirements for instructional reviewers. There is some overlap between the selection criteria for instructional and library materials. We will start this portion of the training with the areas where there is overlap and discuss the selection criteria for instructional materials later in this portion of the training. It is important to note that this training does not replace the requirement for state and school district instructional material reviewers found in Section 1006.29, Parent 5. State and school district instructional materials reviewers must also complete the department's training program for instructional material reviewers. All materials in public schools, whether found in a library, included on a reading list, or in instructional materials, must include consideration of the following factors: avoiding the use of any unsolicited theories or strategies that may lead to student indoctrination. Meetings for the purpose of selecting instructional materials must be open to the public, including parents, and consultation with school community stakeholders, including parents, is required in the purchasing of new library materials. The age of students with access to the materials, the educational purpose, the degree to which the material will be supplemented by classroom instruction, consideration of the broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity of students. In addition, all materials used in public school must be free of pornography and free of materials prohibited under Section 847.012. Instructional materials reviewers should recommend only accurate, objective, balanced, non-inflammatory, and current materials. And unlike library materials, all instructional materials must be aligned with the state's academic standards. Reviewers must also consider recommending instructional materials for academically talented students, such as students in advanced placement courses. Materials should be suited to the student's comprehension. The ability to comprehend material should consider the factors common to all materials and discussed in the prior slide. This includes the age of the students, educational purpose, the degree that teachers in the classroom will supplement the material, and the diversity of students who will use the material. Maturity level, reading level, and material clarity are also significant. Finally, instructional materials needs to be readable by presenting content at a level appropriate to student abilities. The pacing of the material must be at a rate that allows students to understand it, and materials must be easy to use and durable enough for multiple uses. The selection criteria for instructional materials includes not only what must be considered and included, but materials that must not be included. Instructional materials that reflect unfairly upon persons because of characteristics which include race, color, creed, national origin, ancestry, sex, religion, disability, socioeconomic status, and occupation should not be included. On the contrary, materials recommended by reviewers should accurately portray the ethnic, socioeconomic, cultural, religious, physical, and racial diversity of our society. Section 1006.31, Parent 2, Parent D, Florida Statute, was amended in 2022 by House Bill 7 to prohibit any reviewer of instructional materials from recommending materials that contradict the principles enumerated in Section 1003.42, Parent 3, Florida Statute. This section includes an acknowledgement that all persons are equal before the law and lists 6 principles that instructional and supporting materials must be consistent with. Section 1003.42, Parent 3, Florida Statute reads: A. No person is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously, solely by virtue of his or her race or sex. B. No race is inherently superior to another race. C. No person should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly on the basis of race, color, national origin, religion, disability, or sex. D. Meritocracy, or traits such as a hard work ethic, are not racist but fundamental to the right to pursue happiness and be rewarded for industry. E. A person, by virtue of his or her race or sex, does not bear responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. F. A person should not be instructed that he or she must feel guilt, anguish, or other forms of psychological distress for actions in which he or she played no part, committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. Whenever appropriate, Section 1006.31, Parent 2, Florida statute, requires that instructional materials include only materials that accurately portray humankind's place in ecological systems, including the necessity for the protection of the environment and conservation of natural resources, and the dangers of tobacco and controlled substances such as drugs. Instructional materials must also demonstrate humanity and compassion by including the portrayal of the appropriate care and treatment of people and animals, and excluding pornography and inhumane treatment. As mentioned earlier, instructional materials must be free of pornography and material prohibited under Section 847.012 Florida statute. Section 1006.31, Parent 2, also directs evaluators of instructional materials to include materials that encourage fire prevention and thrift, which means using money and other resources wisely and not carelessly. Section 1006.31, Parent 2, further directs instructional materials reviewers to ensure that when selecting materials for social science, history, or civics courses, that those instructional materials contain the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. Districts may wish to use the department's core questions rubric when evaluating instructional materials. In addition to the content rubric shown, other subjects include presentation, learning in Florida statutes, and State Board of Education rule. The full rubric may be found on the Florida Department of Education's instructional materials website. The section of the rubric titled Florida Statutes and State Board of Education Rule discusses the rejection of any unsolicited strategies that could be seen as indoctrination, or that contain divisive materials such as critical race theory, culturally responsive teaching, social justice, and social emotional learning. Critical race theory, culturally responsive teaching, social justice, social and emotional learning, and any other unsolicited theories that may lead to student indoctrination are prohibited. Both instructional material reviewers and library media specialists should be aware of district responsibilities. The responsibility of the content of instructional materials lies with those that choose the materials. Parents that are challenging or objecting to materials should not have to prove that those materials are objectionable. Instead, the individuals that chose the materials must be prepared to defend the educational value of the materials if needs arise. Parental feedback is important, and parents should be involved in all aspects of choosing materials. The district school board oversees the final process of instructional materials after a vetting process that involves all stakeholders, including teachers, students, district staff, and community members. Districts must adopt procedures to permit a parent or resident to object to the adoption or use of any instructional material if it doesn't meet the criteria of 1006.31, Parent 2, or 1006.40, Parent 3, Parent D. While not a criteria for selection of instructional materials, we caution all personnel to be aware of copyright and fair use guidelines. Always follow your district policies and procedures. Thank you for attending the training program for library media and instructional materials reviewers. Your work in helping choose Florida's library media and instructional materials is a critical part of student success. Please click the next slide to print your certificate.
Thank you all for sitting through that. What I was discussing with Kira is this is drinking water through a fire hydrant. And so Kira will make available the transcript so that you all may be able to rely upon it, because it's quite a lot to try to retain. So with that, our next section is public comment. And unlike the school board public comment, this is a special purpose meeting. And before we go into the guidelines for citizen input, we would request that the public comment not be generally directed, but directed to the board committee itself and the actions of the committee and the goals and guidelines of the committee. So the guidelines for citizen input, according to school board policy PO 0169.1, each statement is made by a member of the public, is limited to 3 minutes duration. Kira will recognize in the order of the meeting sign-in sheet. The time will start when the speaker is at the podium, and the speaker will hear a beep at the end of his or her 3 minutes. Only the individual identified in the sign-in sheet is allowed to address the committee. Time may not be yielded to other speakers. During the meeting, please refrain from clapping or outbursts, negative or positive of any kind, so we can proceed with dignity and decorum by not infringing on any individual's First Amendment rights, let alone their 3 minutes. Speakers should not engage in personal attacks or abusive language. If you have anything to give to committee members, please do this through the executive assistant, Mrs. Haddock. Finally, the district supports First Amendment rights of speakers and rights outlined in House Bill 1069 regarding library materials. Some individuals may choose to exercise these rights, which may include reading material with language or content that is not appropriate for all audiences. Knowing this, for those people who are on the live stream, please make a viewing decision appropriate for yourself and your family.
First up, Miss Jennifer Pippin. On deck, Mr. Kevin Browning.
Good evening. Oh, is this thing on? Okay, here it is. Sorry. Good evening. I just first wanted to say thank you to the committee for all of the parent representatives for volunteering your time in this committee. We're going to have a lot of hard conversations, but it's going to be very interesting, and it's going to be for the best of all children. And for the district staff that's working overtime, thank you too. I really appreciate it. We've come a long way since the first time we challenged a book in October of 2021. Like was referenced before, it was not done in the sunshine, it was not done in the public, so nobody really knew what was going on. So I think that this is great that we are having these hard conversations in the public, and you're going to see a lot of people are going to have to agree to disagree. And how I kind of was explaining to my family before this meeting is, you know, you guys are kind of the jury, and then it goes to you know, the school board. So there's going to be, you know, agreements and disagreements here at this level, and then there's going to be agreements and disagreements at the school board level. So there's going to be a lot of, you know, talk about these books. A lot of these books, you know, have been in the headlines and things like that, but I do have to compliment the district and say that 98% of the books that have been challenged have been permanently removed. These books that are coming to you guys are that gray area. A lot of what you saw in the training, just having, again, those hard conversations about gender identity, the sexually explicit content that doesn't involve graphic sex like the ones that have already been permanently removed. So having that discussion amongst the committee, and then again going to the school board. I was one of the 4 parents that served on the committee that did the training that you guys just saw. Applied to do the additional training that they're going to do in compliance with House Bill 1069. We should find out in a month or so. So again, I just wanted to thank you guys very much for your time and for your dedication to this committee, and looking forward to doing the work. Thank you.
Good evening, committee. Good evening. Thank you for taking your time on this committee. Chair Barenborg and board members, we appreciate your leadership. Thank you for being transparent in the process and letting us know how the process will go forward. Just had a not age appropriate or as a reason. Well, we're saying through the training, wide range of materials on various difficulty levels. And we all know elementary can range from 5 to 12 sometimes. Middle school from 12 to 14 or 15, and high school, well, you get it. Now, I think most of us believe that it is age appropriate to read about how to treat people and love each other, as well as any mistakes in the country that may have caused us to fall short. It's age appropriate to learn about our beautiful similarities and differences. There's great values in books like or about Ruby Bridges, Anne Frank, Roberto Clemente, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and so many others from all walks of life and their experiences. Now, personally, I may think that football has too many concussions and profanity for my kids, but that should not stop other people from enrolling their kids in football. Each parent can decide what affects their kids, but committee, thank you once again for committing to do what's right as a whole for all parents and students enrolled in our schools.
Next up, Mr. Michael Marsh. On deck, Mr. Anthony Stewart.
Good evening. No one gets to play judge, jury, and executioner of these library materials. We're not here to cater to any political group. When you look at the material in front of you, okay, 17,000 students, 98% of parents say there's no problem. We're doing this. We're wasting the time. Yes, we thank you for your time, but it's a waste of time to be here tonight. We're doing this to appease Moms for Liberty, and it's disgusting. Not only is it disgusting to pander to them, but it's disgusting that one of their pandering school board members allows a criminal to serve on this committee. You didn't think I was going to let that go, did you? Can't have criminals in PTA. Book objection committee, no problem. More to come on that. Again, CRT, huh? Let's be clear. Books are too gay, too black. That's the real problem. Come on. If there was a real problem, look at the stands. We would have parents in here saying, come on, we need to do something. You know why? We can't find the boogeyman. He didn't come out yet. no pun intended, to the gay community, all kids, best by kids. Is it really best by kids to keep allowing this political nonsense to happen? It's not. It's a waste of time. Let's talk about legalities. If you pull stuff from this library and my kids can't go in there and pick out those books, maybe those bad people at Southern Poverty Law, maybe they're going to come in and sue the school district because you didn't allow those books to be in circulation. Allow the experts to be the experts. These poor media specialists. Just recently at the science fair, one walked up to me and said, "Thank you." And I ain't going nowhere. And you can keep reminding people, you damn right I'm a criminal, and I do more than any of your little hate group. So tonight, it should end. Why are we here? We're here because Miss Pippin said, her chapter said books are bad, so you guys better do something. 1, 2, 3, 4. You better do something, because if not, more books are coming. What are we going to do? We're going to do this every month? At what point is enough enough? It's never going to end. Let them sue. What are they, 0 for 3? Brevard? Shouts out to Ms. Jenkins up there, good school board member. It should stop. If there was a real problem, you would have 16,000 students, their parents in here telling you that. The kids ain't reading. Isn't that a bigger problem? We can't even get to 25% of these kids reading, but instead we'll waste our time here to talk about anti-racist baby because it says the word race. Aw, poor Pippin. Good night.
A little late because I didn't know about the meeting. I guess we're going to have to get better means of advertising. But I'm here. I'm really appalled at the fact that we can discuss so many different statutes and we don't emphasize the date in which they were adopted. I did hear a couple of dates. But the date they adopted is extremely important. If you're saying that this is not political, and the earliest date that I saw these statutes adopted was 2022. That means that all these came under a certain political party. Hello, somebody. So then, is anybody in here that did not graduate after 2022? Is there anybody in here what happened to all of us? Those same books was in the library when we came through many of them. There wasn't any problem then. Now, my thing again, too, what about the opt-out form? You don't have the right to choose what my child reads. If you don't want your child to read that, sign an opt-out form, get it to the librarian. Let's stop wasting taxpayers' money and our valuable time on madness and following crazy people. We elect school board members with hope that they would represent the totality of us all, not be ran down by some political party, sidekicks, and forced to do their bidding. We're better than this. We have been better than this. Again, critical race theory. But we didn't hear nothing about the 1776 Commission. Hello, somebody. Why are you going to pick critical race theory and don't talk about the 1776 Commission, which a party adopted? We are better than this, and everybody ain't asleep. Believe you me. We all aren't asleep, and we see you and the school board who are adopting this craziness and following this craziness. We're going to try to get you out of here. You ain't got no business here. If you cannot make good, sound judgment and decisions for all of us, and you're going to continue to let this crazy group lead you, you are not worthy to be our leaders. And you all have a blessed day.
Mr. Ansbacher, that concludes citizen input.
Thank you. The next order of business is to select a permanent committee chair. The term of the chair's service will be for 1 year, commensurate with the board committee itself. The responsibilities of this committee's chair will be to facilitate discourse in accordance with the procedures outlined in Policy PO 2522. At this time, I call for nominations for committee chair.
I nominate Diane Parentella to be the committee chair.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor, announce by saying aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, say no. We have I'm sorry. Please.
Ms. Corbin, would you mind unmuting and stating your vote?
Aye.
Okay, we have a unanimous motion carrying. I happily cede the chair duties.
All right.
This term, this is Mrs. Corbin. You said her term would be for a year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And within that year, will we be voting for someone else before she leaves seats or after she leaves seat?
I think it would be at the time that we would have the next committee. That she,
Okay.
Unless she resigns early, the chair will be the chair for the duration of this committee.
So it would be this year's same date, or would it be just the 2024, 2025 school year?
I think it would be, the next one would be the next school year. Is that right, Kira?
At the annual reorg meeting.
Well, that's right, at the reorganization meeting next year. I apologize.
Okay. Is there any chance she can share a little bit about herself?
Sure. I'm Diane Parentella. I've been with this district since 1989, started in a classroom. I moved into the library position in 2020 and have served as the district lead media specialist in the district for the last 2 years. I was born and raised in Vero Beach, and I've worked in the district since 1989. So, as chair, the first order of business is to establish the guidelines for frequency of meetings, dates, and corresponding times. In support of this discussion, I will now read the procedures outlined in PO Policy 2522. In preparation for its review, challenged materials will be provided to members of the District Objection Committee from the current circulation inventory. The petitioner may make an opening statement addressed to the District Objection Committee to include the specific objection of the required material. The committee will decide how much time it will take to read the objected material in its entirety. The committee will reconvene at the next meeting to discuss findings. The petitioner may present during the time in which the committee is discussing and voting. However, the petitioner may not participate or contribute during any phase of the deliberations. Voting will be written and confidential. A vote of a simple majority of those present entitled to vote will determine the resolution of the complaint. The vote and recommendation will be forwarded to the superintendent, who will then submit the committee's findings to the school board for a review and rendering of a final determination. No challenged material may be removed from the curriculum or from a collection of resource materials except by action of the board or as otherwise required in this policy and Florida law. And no challenged material may be removed solely because it represents ideas that may be unpopular or offensive to some. Any board action to remove material will be accompanied by the board's statement of its reasons for the removal. The school board's decision is final and not subject to further petition or review. If the board finds that any material meets the requirements under Florida Statute 1006.28, parens 2, parens A, 2.a, or that any other material contains prohibited content under Florida Statute 1006.28, parens 2, parens A, 2b, 1, the district shall discontinue use of the material. With a thorough understanding of the procedures, I would like to open the discussion. Do we have a challenge in front of us?
Right now, we need to set a.
So,
Well, prior to the selection, may I just ask, in the procedures, did it say that the vote is confidential?
number 6 says voting will be written and confidential. A vote of a simple majority of those present entitled to vote will determine the resolution of the complaint.
And Madam Chair, as I said previously, it is a sunshine committee. It was not previously a sunshine committee. And as such, we will not have confidential
Okay.
vote. They will all be in the sunshine.
That's what I thought he had said. That's why I wanted
I
to
was just
clarify that.
reading my script.
Thank you very much.
So then we need to determine a timeline for meetings. So do we have calendar options? Are 5:30 meetings acceptable to the group?
They're good.
Do we need to pick specific dates?
Are we meeting once a month?
Let's try and get the next date on the calendar, because then we will have challenges brought forth. And in preparation for that meeting, you'll have the backup documentation you need to prepare to review that challenge.
So we're just scheduling our next meeting?
With the last Wednesday, this is the last Wednesday of the month. Would the last Wednesday of the month be feasible for everyone? That will give everyone the opportunity, close to 31 days, to read a book and to be able to have a fair judgment on the book.
I unfortunately serve on another committee that's meets on the last Wednesday of every month, so I would not be able to meet at that time.
Who was just speaking?
That was Liz Cannon speaking. She serves
Okay.
on another committee that meets every last Wednesday of the month. So she made arrangements to be here today, but can't be here in the future on the last Wednesday of the month. So could we look at the 21st being our next meeting date, being the third Wednesday in February?
Works for me.
Yes. I'm open for, if I have any other, okay, would this date tonight be set as a permanent date for next month, or is it subject to change if needed?
We will
I
need,
would think it would be flexible with what the committee is available to be participating in. So if the majority of the committee is available to meet at a specific date and time, then I think that would be what we would find acceptable.
Okay, I'm okay to move forward with the third Wednesday for February, in the event that everyone can still make the meeting at that date and time.
Good.
Okay. So it sounds like there's consensus around meeting on Wednesday, February 21st at 5:30 PM.
make a motion to call for.
Do we have a motion for that meeting date?
I move February 21st at 5:30 PM.
Do I have a second?
Second.
A second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so our meeting will be on February 21st at 5:30 PM. Do we need to set a second meeting after that?
It's up to the will of the committee.
We could do that. Maybe it would help us all.
Right, so if we set a second meeting after that, looking at March, do I have a motion for a proposed time in March?
Madam Chair, if I could make one observation while you all are considering that. it will depend on, one, what materials are presented to you in February, and two, how long it will take for you all to reasonably expect to be able to review those materials. So if you want to set something for March, I think it's reasonable while everyone is here, but also I think that you might,
With the caveat that it might need to be
Yes.
changed.
yes, ma'am.
Well, the other challenge with March being that spring break is the last week of March. So for the parents here, the students would be out of school during spring break. That might be a challenge the last week of March, so.
Do we do this one book at a time, or do we do this several
Correct.
books at a time?
Correct.
It's entirely up to you all. There are, it's not uncommon to do it one book at a time. Depending on the materials, you may choose to take a couple. It's, at this point, it is entirely in the discretion of your board. You are a volunteer board, and we recognize that.
How many books do we have currently challenged?
We'll have a better idea of that within the next couple of days, and what we'll do is email the committee members and let you know title, evidence, reason for challenge, and available copies. That might factor into how many copies we have available to be able to read the material.
And you guys will provide us all with a copy?
Yes.
Yes.
So that was my next question. If there's a challenge, let's just say a number of 7 books, and the committee, are we expected to read each and every book, or are we expected to read a certain book and we give our feedback on that book?
I believe the expectation is that you read each book in its entirety as part of the review process.
You will be voting and making a recommendation to keep, retain, discard, remove. So it's critical with your role that you have an understanding of the material in its entirety to make the informed decision to recommend to the superintendent and then the school board.
So as a committee, do we have any limits on the books that we review monthly that's challenged? Because I couldn't see that if we're bombarded with 7 books and there are over 200 plus pages, that the committee can read 7 books within 30 days.
No, we as a committee would have the determination of how many books we take on at a time. So if we see that there's 7 books that are lengthy chapter books, that we would take them in smaller parts and 1 or 2 at a time, depending on how long it would take us to get through the book. So that's a decision that we would come to consensus on as a committee at our next meeting. So at our next meeting, we will have some books that will be before us to decide how to move forward with them. So at that time, at our next meeting, we can determine which books we want to tackle first and prioritize getting through the list of books that are currently under review.
Ms. Parentella, may I suggest that we schedule, March with spring break, it is a little challenging, but if we schedule the third Wednesday in April 17th, because for instance, if in February there are no books to review, then all of a sudden we're going to be without a date again. So if we chose April 17th, is that feasible for? May I move
So you
approval
may
of
move
April 17th
April
at
17th
5:30?
at 5:30.
Okay.
So we're going to skip March because of spring break. Do I have a
Okay.
second on the April 17th date?
Second.
Seconded by
Second.
Sarah. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So April 17th will be our second meeting. So with the time of between February and April, it might be that we choose to review more books depending on what is before us. But we will make that determination at our February 21st meeting.
And Dr. Shafi, you did say that we will have a copy of why the book was challenged to go along with while we're reading it, to see the viewpoint of what the person was challenging versus our viewpoint of what we perceive.
I believe that is correct,
That's what it's in
that
law.
we will be
Okay.
given the reasons that the book's being challenged when we're given the books that are being challenged?
Yes,
Yeah,
you will
that was
have.
the question
You
from
will have all of the documentation submitted as part of the challenge. Chair, would you mind restating the dates? We do have one piece of consideration. We have to make sure this room is available.
Okay, so the dates are February 21st at 5:30 and April 17th at 5:30. Those are the third
So
Wednesdays.
I was just informed that February 21st is an ESC Parent Advisory Council that is slated for a meeting already in this room. So that would not be available.
Do you guys have any other room in the building that you could?
We have room, but we would want to allow seating.
So the
and-
challenge for us to have a meeting in a different room is that it's an open to the public meeting with citizen input being allowed. We would need to have space where we could meet.
I was hoping they had another space, but.
We do too.
Is a school an option? Is one of the local schools an option?
The Storm Grove Library probably would be able to, would suffice. I mean, it's as
Because
big
I
as
think
this
if we're
one.
coming up with dates that we're all trying to make
Sure.
ourselves
Sure.
convenient, that it could be.
How would February 22nd, the next day, a Thursday, work?
February 22nd.
What if we did the Thursday, the last Thursday, since has her committee meeting on Wednesday?
Somebody
The la-
just said they
The
can.
last one.
But someone else has a conflict.
I like the idea of potentially using the Storm Grove Library. I mean, it's in the same vicinity. I don't know if there would be any tech issues in that, in like setting up or anything like that, but
Maybe we could vote to have it at Storm Grove?
We'd have to find out if it is available.
We would have to
and-
check
Have
with
to
Storm
ask.
Grove to find out if it's available on February 21st, but I think, trying to keep to the Wednesday and trying to keep to that schedule.
So we have to kind of have further the discussion for this to be the location because of the live stream capability.
I understand.
Okay. So what about the 22nd? Is 22nd not good for
22nd
someone
is
else?
not
Or
good.
the Tuesday before or the Thursday after?
So if we can look then at,
Chair Parentella?
Yes.
I was just informed that the conflict no longer exists. They will move on the 21st.
oh, thank you.
Okay,
okay.
Oh, so we're
you.
taking priority.
yes.
Thank you. Hey, I like being chair for that. All right, so now that that is resolved, and we have 2 dates on the calendar, is there any other questions, discussion?
Are we good for the 17th of April?
So we will make, if I'm understanding, we will make the decision once we see how many books they're put to challenge. We would determine then how many books from those challenge that we will accept to review.
You will
But do
accept.
We
put
will
that-
review all of them. However, at our next meeting, we will decide how many to tackle at one time. So our task is to review any books that are challenged. That's the task of our committee, to review any books that are challenged. So if there are 8 books, 10 books, 12 books, 3 books, we will determine the order that we review them in and how long each one should take to review. Determined by how many copies are available for all of us on the committee to be able to read and make our determination.
Okay.
And I think it's a critical point to let everybody know that the moment a challenge is initiated, students don't have access to it. So take your time and, exercise your due diligence to review the material because students don't have access to it from that point of a
From
formal
the point of
challenge.
objection.
So I did pose the question in the chat to see if we could get a copy of that slideshow, just to have the policy and procedures and the laws present. I'm a tangible person, so I like to kind of go back and refer back and forth. So is there any way we can get a copy of the statute
We
and
can.
the terminology that the state is given?
Sure, the slideshow existed as an available resource last year under that training, so just know when you receive that, the content is similar, but the background images will not match the information that you just saw. So we'll provide the slides and the transcript. The transcript has slide by slide, exactly what was covered on there as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, please.
There was something that, right prior to the section 4 in the slideshow, it said something about another training for committees such as this. Is there such another training?
I believe it was referencing training for instructional materials reviewers, and at the state level, there
Okay.
is a training for that.
I understand.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I just want to intercede. Kira is going to provide the transcript of the proceedings. There will be reference in the transcript to standards that are in section 1006.40 sub 3D. That subsection doesn't exist anymore. It is now subsection C. I will send a memo that is going to be about 2 lines long that says there are multiple references to this subsection, and when you look for it, instead of D, look to C.
Okay.
Okay. So with no further items before us, I'd like to adjourn this meeting. That way.